Hello there and welcome to the Go Ahead Dublin Championship show here on Dubs TV. We're gearing up for Go Ahead Dublin football final weekend this weekend. It's Kilmacud Crokes against St Judes in the Go Ahead Dublin Senior 1 football final this Sunday afternoon at Parnell Park. Crokes now going for the double after their hurler success in the Senior A final last weekend. Judes aiming for a first ever senior football title this Sunday afternoon. We're going to be joined by our expert panel to preview the game and the Senior 2 final as well. We'll be joined by the chairman of both Kilmacud Crokes and St Judes, and also from some members of the camp as well. A little bit later on, we're going to be looking back at that epic Go Ahead Dublin Senior A hurling final last weekend as Kilmacud Crokes snatched victory from the jaws of defeat to beat Na Fianna after extra time. That's to come later on. First up, though, it's the football. Okay, I'm delighted to be joined by former Dublin footballer Barry Cahill and the Herald's Conor McKeon to preview this Sunday's Go Ahead Dublin Senior 1 football final. Guys, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek. No problem.
Looking forward to another enthralling encounter this weekend. We had a cracker in the hurling last Saturday, so hopefully the same in the football this weekend. Barry, St. Bridget's this year are commemorating their 10-year anniversary, winning 2011 senior football title. Obviously, you were part of that team. You know what these guys are going through this week, the players are going through this week in terms of preparing for the game and the nerves and the excitement around what goes into county final week. I'm sure plenty of, more urging Sunday to come as quick as possible more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's a very exciting time for any club footballer. The Dublin Senior Club Championship, in my view, is the toughest club competition in the country. It's the hardest one to win. The standard is extremely high. Certainly, it doesn't get handed to you. It can take years of effort to get there. So, for the likes of Judes and Crokes, it's a really enjoyable period. And I suppose once the inter-county season finishes up, all focus is on the club championship as you get into September, October. The evenings are starting to come in a bit as well once you get in beyond Halloween. So there's a really nice feel around the place, getting into Parnell Park, playing those evening matches in quarterfinal, semi-final stage, just builds up nicely. And obviously for the club itself, once the final whistle of the semi-final is gone, they're in organisation mode in terms of getting all the bunting and the colours and stuff in the local schools and areas and in the club itself. So it's always a nice period to be in. Managed to play in a few finals myself and got on a couple of winning ones. And yeah, there's no greater feeling because I said it's something that's very hard earned.
Yeah, you've seen plenty of bunting and celebrations already this week at Judes, and I guess Crokes were slightly they had the hurling final to kind of focus on that last weekend, but I'm sure plenty of excitement this week as well. Plenty of colours around Kilmacud and Stillorgan ahead of the Sunday's final. Conor, we're going to talk about the semi-finals in a moment, but I guess assessing the season and the year overall, do you see these two teams as being the best two teams in the county, the two finalists, Judes and Kilmacud Crokes, deserving finalists?
Yeah, I definitely would have picked Crokes out at the start of the year, and if you were asking me for maybe a slight outsider, I would have picked Judes, just because the level of consistency over the last decade is really, really exceptional. And on top of that, okay, they've fallen short. They got to a lot of semi-finals, and I think their win rate in semi-finals might be something like 3 from 9 now. So they have been just slightly short of the quality required to win a Dublin championship. But I think in the last 3 or 4 years, what you've seen is the same management, an awful lot of the same players, and they have actually developed as a squad. It's not a case that they make a semi-final last year or the year before and then they fall away. They have been building year on year. They've become a better football team, a better balanced team, and certainly a better attacking team. And I think a team with more firepower off their bench, which can make a massive difference in the Dublin Championship. So yeah, I wouldn't be, if you had said 3 months ago or 2 months ago, whenever we started, that Crokes and Judes would be in a final, I wouldn't have been the least bit surprised. The only thing against that was, Ballymun won last year's championship at such a canter, and they were so impressive that, you obviously had to keep an eye out for them. But I think, as we've discussed before, the schedule of having the championship after the All-Ireland doesn't suit Ballymun at all. Doesn't suit any team that has such a high number of Dublin senior players. So, I think Judes have benefited from that over the last few years as well. They can kind of crack on with their team during the league, and then really you just have to drop Kevin McManaman and over the last 2 years Tom Lahiff into that. So, they have such a very, very solid structure. And as I said, they've become a much more developed team, much more balanced team in the last couple of years. So, they were brilliant against Lucan. Lucan were good against Ballymun. I think Lucan probably fancied themselves going into that semi-final because, that they have so much pace and they have a good system themselves, but they were completely dismantled by Judes and they got very frustrated, and that's what Judes can do to you. And they finished the game really superbly. So, yeah, no surprises about Crokes, and only, I'd still have had Judes in the top 3 or 4. So not a massive surprise when it comes to a final.
Barry, I guess looking back at those semi-finals, we're talking about Conor saying there that he's not a massive surprise that both of these teams are in the final. Certainly from the semi-finals, there was pretty much one-way traffic in both games, which was a bit of a surprise, I guess, in that regard. Certainly the Crokes-Bowden game was expected to be a lot tighter than it turned out to be. So no doubt, deserving winners. Neither Bowden nor Lucan really showed up in the semi-finals, and Crokes and Judes, bar the late comeback from Lucan, Crokes and Judes pretty much easing into the final.
Yeah, it was comprehensive victories for both teams, for both Kilmacud Crokes and St. Jude's. I think for Crokes going into the Ballybowden game, it was very much the marquee matchup. Probably the 2 best teams in the county. A lot of people would have taken that view going head to head on it. And for Kilmacud Crokes going into it, they felt that they needed to up at a level compared to their performance against Na Fianna, where they were efficient to a point, but they were a little bit fortunate the way the game finished, in that Aaron Byrne basically had a chance in injury time to knock Kilmacud Crokes out in that quarter final. So it looked like they were peaking for a semi-final, and they very much back that up with that type of performance. I don't think too many people expected Ballybowden to fall away that easily. So that's a massive win for Kilmacud Crokes going into the game now and the final. And then I suppose on the other side of it, certainly, Lucan just haven't been in that semi-final top 4 place for the last number of years, and it probably showed on the day. They were fully deserving in terms of getting to that semi-final with a fantastic victory against Ballymun, but I'd say their management team and players would have a lot of disappointment following that game, that they just didn't really show up and play to their strengths. A lot of that obviously has to go to Judes and the way they shut them down. And that is the thing when you're playing against Judes. They do have that ability to make life very, very difficult for the opposition. We've seen that for the last number of years. And to Conor's point, they probably haven't developed that enough to be a genuine Dublin senior club title winner. Because it's all well and good compacting your defence and reducing teams, but you need to be able to offer something on the other end of the pitch, and that transition of play was something that they hadn't really cracked. But I think they've developed that over the last couple of years, and you would have seen that even the last day. Kevin McManaman has been such a key player for that team for the last number of years. Always puts in a phenomenal shift when he goes back to the club, but he's still hugely influential in that group. But if you looked at, they got 118 in the semi-final against Lucan, and Kev just got 2 points in it, so they're not as reliant on Kev as they would have in previous years, and I think that's obviously something that will stand to Judes going forward.
Yeah, Conor, I guess the 3 goals from Lucan sort of made it interesting, especially towards the end of the game, where I think they reduced the gap to 4 points at one stage with a few minutes to go. But overall, Judes, they went into the game as favourites and they dominated the game. That third quarter scoring burst, they were, I think, 7-2 up at half time, probably deserved to be even further ahead. That goal right at the start of the second half from Brendan Gallagher, the penalty, made it look like this could be interesting. That third quarter from Judes, though, they absolutely took off and pretty much won the game by the second half water break. How impressed were you overall by Judes in that semi-final heading into this final?
Yeah, very impressed. I would have liked to have seen what had happened if CJ Smith had scored a goal when he went steaming through and the score was still very low on the 2 teams. just because, if Lucan had gone ahead at that point, Judes would have to have responded with something other than, very sort of measured play, that they would have had to force it maybe a small bit, would have changed the dynamic. I'm sure they would have responded and won the game, but it would have been good to see them kind of work themselves out of a slightly more awkward situation, because it was one of those games, the longer it went on, the further Judes were just going to get away from Lucan. So, they are really impressive. The only thing I will say is, as good as they looked early on, and despite the fact that, as Barry mentioned, that their scoring rate this year would be miles up on what it has been in previous years. They do kind of, not that they wait to assert their authority, but they'll kind of grind the team down in the first half. And then as the second half goes on, like you look the last day and like what they scored in the closing stages, like they kind of accelerated their rate of scoring. And like off the bench as well, they have a lot. They brought on Diarmuid McLaughlin, Brian Coakley, Ronan Joyce, Rob Martinez. Like they're all guys who were starting for them last year or the year before. So, they're bringing real experience off the bench as well to kind of, manage the games and see them through. So that's why I think they're a really dangerous threat going into the final, because, their game management is really well. They carry the ball without any great sense of panic. They make sure the right player gets on the ball in the right situation. They're very good defensively in their matchups. So in terms of the management of the team, they're incredibly well drilled. And I think the way they're set up, it's very unlikely that Crokes, with all their firepower, regardless of, how well their forwards have been going, will blow them off the park or even put up a significant lead by half time. And I think in that situation, it gives Judes a great chance, because I said, they're really good around the middle. They're really good at squeezing. They're really good at game management in a tight situation. So I think it kind of bodes well in them going into a final. And like those players have been, like they played in so many semi-finals. Most of them have played in the final before. I don't think they'll have any psychological hang-ups about going into this final, or I don't think they'll see themselves as outsiders in any way. So like I think it is shaped up for a cracking final, just to see even how Crokes respond to how well Judes set up at the back, and then how many men that Judes commit forward at different stages, because there were times in the first half that Lucan were able to kick balls in from the 65 into Brendan Gallagher, and okay, Lucan didn't win too many of them, but there was definitely space in behind there. So Judes are no different from any other football team. If you want to have a more attacking outlook, you are going to sacrifice something at the back. And against Judes, they're not going to spurn the sort of chances that Lucan did the last day.
And Barry, then from a Crokes point of view, it was one of these games where it was a kind of tight opening 10 minutes or so, and then Crokes sort of ran riot in that last 20 minutes of the first half. But it was one of those games where I looked at the scoreboard at one point and I was kind of surprised to see how far ahead Crokes were, even though they were the dominant team. It was kind of, they sort of kept the scoreboard ticking over pretty quickly, and suddenly it was 1-9 to 3 points at half time or something like that. It was 1-9 to 3 points at half time, but it was 1-8 to 2 points or something with a few minutes to go, and suddenly you're like, well, this game looks like it is over. Crokes just seemed to do the job nearly nice and quietly in that first half, and again had the game won by half time, really.
Yeah, it was actually a bit similar to the Na Fianna game, because again, they seemed to build up a lead of 1 or 2 points to 5 or 6 points without anyone in the ground really noticing, and without Na Fianna actually, doing a huge amount wrong either. They just have that way about them that they're cold and they're clinical, and they mean business in terms of racking up those scores and creating that gap. I suppose a couple of factors really heading into the game this weekend is certainly Paul Mannion and how Judes are going to manage him, because these teams obviously met each other in the final 3 years ago in 2018, and Paul Mannion gave one of the great Dublin senior county final displays. I think he got 1-6, 1-7 that night, and was very much the standout player, head and shoulders above nearly anyone else on the pitch that day, and Judes had no answer for him. So, 3 years on, Paul Mannion is still playing phenomenal football. In my view, he's still one of the best forwards in the country. And I'm sure Desi Farrell would love to have him in 2022. But are Judes, do Judes have the man marker to go against them? And do they have a system in play whereby they can limit his effect? But in saying that, Kilmacud Crokes have been quite open in terms of the different scores across the board. I mean, Shane Cunningham got the goal the last day, but they have a lot of forwards who are well able to chip in with scores, and aren't quite as overly reliant on Paul Mannion. He got 4 points the last day. He only got 2 points against Na Fianna, so they have a lot of firepower. But for Judes to get the win this weekend, certainly they're going to have to nullify Paul Mannion's influence. And it'll be interesting to see if they get the matchups right on that one, because traditionally they have got their matchups well and trying to limit it, diluting the impact of the opposition's most dangerous man. So I think Paul Mannion's name will be spoken a lot in the Judes dressing room this week.
Conor, a word on the two defeated semi-finalists, Lucan and Ballybowden St Enda's. Probably, obviously, they'll both be very disappointed not to get to the final, but probably they'll assess the years differently. Lucan will probably see this as a positive year, a huge stepping stone for them in terms of getting to a semi-final. First of all, the young players they have coming through, they'll probably look at this in a couple of weeks' time and see this has been a very good year for them from a football point of view. Bowden might see this though as an opportunity missed. They have the kind of the team that, the big names we've seen over the last number of years. Obviously, some young guys coming through as well, but Bowden probably see this more as an opportunity missed as opposed to Lucan seeing it as a big stepping stone for them.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. If you look through the Bowden team, there are an awful lot of players still around from the All-Ireland winning team in 2016. And I assume now with Anthony Rainbow going in with Glenn Ryan and Kildare, there would be a change in management. So, when that, there was definitely a sense last year, even though they were resoundingly beaten in that Dublin final by Ballymun, that they still had the profile of a team that could go on and win again, because they've been hugely consistent the last few years, really in the league as well. They have so many players that are of a very, very high level, if only slightly below inter-county level with Dublin, that they're able to keep going at that pace all through the year. And, in the last few years, they've only really had to bring in Michael Darragh-Macaulay, even though he wasn't around this year. So they've been a really consistent and strong team, but there are a lot of players who have been around a long time. And I think with any change in management, with a team of that age profile, there will inevitably be, some players who don't come back, or, the manager will come in with some new ideas. And I don't think Bowden will necessarily fall away. They've too many good footballers to do that. But maybe the team and that guys, in that shape and in that style, will probably develop a bit between now and next year. The Lucan situation is obviously very different because they are a very, very young team and they haven't been in that situation before. And, I was struck by the number of players that had either played at minor or under 21 for Dublin at some stage. And, they have an awful lot of pace there, and I think they have a good setup. They probably need to, Brendan Gallagher, his scoring was absolutely off the charts this year. I thought Harry Ladd, did a great job as well of taking an awful lot of sort of heat on himself as an inside forward. So, to me, Lucan are definitely a common team. You have to remember that they did what they did without Emma O'Keneela as well, who would have had a very strong midfield partnership with Darren Gavin if he was fully fit. And they have a very sound defensive setup. So I think, if there's another forward or two to come through from Lucan, they'll definitely be a force over the next few years. And look, beating Ballymun as county champions, with all the talent and all the very sort of exalted players that they have, that's a huge step for that team to make, because they've been kind of skirting on the fringes of that. They're very much a Division 1 side, but they haven't been a Dublin semi-final side, and I think they probably consider themselves to be that now, and justly so.
Okay, good stuff. It's time for part one of our club focus for this week, and it's the St. Jude's chairman, Gareth Evans, now to start us off to tell us all about the great work being done at St. Jude's and the work that's gone on at senior level, as well as their senior footballers prepare for to compete for Senior 1 football honours this weekend. Okay, I'm joined now by the St. Jude's chairman, Gareth Evans, here for our club focus this week ahead of the Go Ahead Dublin Senior 1 football final. St. Jude's taking on Kilmacud Crokes this Sunday afternoon at 3:15 at Parnell Park. Gareth, thanks a million for joining us this week.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks for having us.
And plenty of excitement this week, I'm sure, around the club, around the Templeogue area ahead of the county final this Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, look, there's huge anticipation. The county finals are few and far between. You don't get them very often, and when you do, it's usually after a number of years of hard work and effort. So, really want to kind of make the most of the experience. And as I say, there's huge anticipation around the community, around the parish, within the schools, etc., and in and around the club. So really, really looking forward to it. It's I suppose it's not that long since we were in the last one. 2018, we were there, the same opponents, Kilmacud Crokes. So we came out the wrong side of that one. So hopefully we can right that wrong this weekend and really have something to celebrate.
Yeah, big time. I guess we'll get into the what it means to be in the county final in a few minutes' time. But first of all, just tell us about the club for people who don't know where St. Jude's are and when you were formed. Tell us a little bit about the history of St. Jude's.
Yeah, well, basically we're Judes is a club. It's a dual club. We're based in Templeogue in the kind of southwest of the city. We're formed in 1978, so 43 odd years ago. And I suppose despite our relatively short history, we've grown to be a reasonably large club in that short period of time. And we have one of the best representations of teams in the county playing across all ages and all codes. But I suppose that, despite that, like we've grown quite quick, but we've still retained a small club, community-based mindset. And the members there are always keen to volunteer and help around the club or get involved. So it's great that we have that kind of real community mindset there. I suppose given our location, on the outskirts, the southwest side of the city, we're a rich blend of kind of Dublin and country influences, due to people, country people that would have settled there and would have been a big part of how we were formed. So, we're no different really to Ireland as a nation. We have a huge diaspora of members spread across the world, and back down the country. But we're often from visitors that come up to see us. We're often likened to a small rural club rather than a large urban one by the people that come due to the kind of culture and atmosphere that they experience in Judes. So yeah, look, we're really proud of our short history. We are a progressive club. We're reactive to change, but also ambitious of succeeding at the highest level. And I suppose we've spent the last 15 years at juvenile level focused on kind of recruiting, developing, retaining the adult players of the future. So this is a big motivation for our club, and in terms of recruiting more players and bringing them in and getting them really excited about where the club's going in the future. And I suppose in saying that, I suppose the overriding ethos of the club is one of inclusivity. And all children are encouraged and nurtured regardless of ability, and we're focused on the kind of social development as much as the games development. But yeah, it's a great little club, I'd call it, but probably large in terms of numbers.
Great stuff. We'll get a little bit more detail from you about the juvenile work that you've put in over the past number of years. I guess first thing though, it is county final weekend this weekend. You mentioned you were in the county final back in 2018, so it's not that long ago, but still a lot's happened in the intervening 3 years from a COVID point of view and everything like that. So tell us what it means for the club to be back in a Senior 1 football final this weekend, especially, like I say, after all the restrictions and everything that we faced over the past year and a half. Yeah,
look, it's absolutely huge. Like we're formed in 1978. Our first final was in 2009 in adult football, in Senior 1 football, and that was against Ballybowden, and obviously we didn't get over the line that day. It was 9 long years, 2018, until we got to the next one, and another 4, well, to now to 2021. So they're hard fought. There's a lot of work and effort, both with the backroom team, the players themselves, that goes into achieving this. And I suppose coming out the back of COVID, the huge excitement now is about going to the game, watching live games, being there to soak in the atmosphere and the experience, and really kind of enjoy the final. So yeah, look, huge anticipation and really looking forward to it. It's a credit to the players as well, who kind of throughout COVID and the various different restrictions that were imposed, which meant kind of training wasn't allowed. They had to kind of train individually on their own, maintain a certain level of fitness, and obviously it's more difficult on your own. There's certain things you can't kind of maybe practice or develop when you're training on your own. But huge resilience shown by players across all teams to do that and to try and kind of keep going and wait for the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess you've spoken there about the work that you're doing at juvenile level already. You've done at juvenile level over the past 20 years or so, and at underage level to get to where you are today, where you're competing in county finals pretty regularly over the past decade or so. Tell us about that work that's gone on at the club from an underage level point of view, the underage structures point of view, over the past maybe 15 or 20 years to get to a point where you are today.
Yeah. So I mean, like, there's been huge effort there, as you say, over the last 15 years. Even in the last 4 years, we've gone from probably 700 juvenile members to about 1,400 in 2021. So we've probably doubled them in that short space of time. But it goes back about 15 years ago, where there was an emphasis placed on developing the academy, or the nursery as it was called at the time, within the club, and bringing lots of kids in to develop and play Gaelic games. So we started to grow our numbers. Obviously, that's a long-term project. It's a long time before they get from 4 or 5 years of age when they start the academy to coming out the other end. But we stuck with it. We've built our numbers gradually over that period of time, and now we've probably got those 4 or 5 year olds that started 15 years ago. We've got them through as far as minor now. So we're going to really start to kind of reap the rewards of that work over the next couple of years as those players enter into adult. The club itself now at the moment is 2,000. Just in 2021, we broke the 2,000 members mark, and there's 1,400 of those are juvenile players across boys and girls, and we've probably 500 in the current academy now, which would be 7 years of age and below. So it's there's lots of bright hope for the future, I suppose, in terms of those numbers there.
Yeah, that's fantastic to see. And then I guess we obviously your footballers are in the Senior 1 football final this weekend. They've been in a couple of Senior 1 finals over the past decade or so. Your senior hurlers have been in senior finals as well. And I guess the big success from your club's point of view is your senior Camogie team, who have just won the senior Camogie title for Dublin. That's their third title in 4 years, I think. So they have been a huge success for yourselves. So obviously that work that you are putting in at underage and juvenile level over the past 10 or 15 years is already beginning to bear fruit from a senior point of view in terms of your county final appearances and county final titles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that, as you said, there are 3 senior A Camogie titles out of the last 4 years, and 2 of those back to back in 2020 and 21. And I suppose it is a very young team. There's a lot of girls on that team who are also playing minor. They're representing Dublin. Aisling and Claire Gannon, who are the joint twin. They're twins and joint captains of the Dublin minor Camogie team as well. And Ellie Young, who play on the senior team for Judes. So it's a huge achievement for quite a young group of girls. And great to see that they'll actually go on to play the first, or well, they're going to play in Leinster. First of all, in the 2020 Leinster competition we played, and the first round of that is on the 27th of November at the end of the month. The ladies footballers were also successful this year at junior championship level in October. And they're also playing the quarterfinal of Leinster against Screen, which will actually be on the 28th of November. So, there's 12. It's great. They're great achievements. They're great to get through to Leinster, and that's the real business end of competition you want to be at. I suppose what's slightly frustrating is that the ladies footballers are out on the 28th of November with the Camogie on the 27th. 2 really huge, important games that will be very, very competitive. 24 hours apart, and we've 12 girls playing who are dual players playing on both teams. So, you know, I recognise the effort that's been done at Camogie County Board level to, you know, run pilots at under 13 and under 14, you know, between Camogie Board and the LGFA to kind of harmonise a fixture schedule. But, you know, hugely frustrating that you know, that the fixture schedules aren't a little bit more sympathetic. But look, we'll get on with it. We'll enjoy the experience. And then the Camogie girls have the opportunity then next February to play the Leinster round of the 2021 championship, the one there. But, you know, as I said, they're a young team. They've got a bright few years ahead of them, and hopefully a few more titles in them as well.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know, the success from the senior Camogie team, and, you know, Danny Sutcliffe is obviously the Dublin senior hurling captain and has been one of our star players for the last decade or so. Kev McManaman has done such great work, obviously, with the senior footballers over the past decade or so. So you have real big superstars, really, and huge characters in the club who I'm sure you will hope will inspire the next generation of underage and juvenile players to try and match what they've been doing, even at senior level for the club and for the county as well. So I'm sure you've got plenty of characters there who can, like I say, try and inspire the next generation. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And, you know, like Danny's said there, he's been you know, one of the main players at a county level now. He won an All-Star in 2013. For Dublin, he's been nominated again this year, so hopefully he can get a second one. Hannah Hegarty is also the captain of the Dublin Camogie team this year, and we got good representation of players on that team. And now also Donny Fox is the manager there, who would have been who's the manager of the Camogie team in the club as well. So great crossover. And as you say, with Kev on the footballers now, Tom Lahiff, who's the captain of the senior football team, playing on Sunday. Tom featuring regularly for Desi's side and the Dubs. So, you know, we have great characters there, and they're real kind of club people, you know. Like Hannah was out doing training before school with groups of kids last week. Danny's out with the under 21 hurlers and footballers over the weekend and the weekend before. So, you know, they all get involved. They all get stuck into helping that next generation and being the kind of role models, you know, for the future, which is really kind of promising, and it's really part of like what we do in the club. You know, it's that community approach, and you know, no team is an island, but you know, we all kind of get stuck in and help each other out. So look, it's great to see, and it's great to see that them getting the recognition of what they've achieved at a county level, on a national stage. You know, so
yeah, it's fantastic to see. Like every club, I'm sure you got plenty of challenges that you face as well on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, and year-to-year basis. Notwithstanding COVID, even leaving COVID aside, that everybody faced. Tell us about some of those challenges that you face as a club now.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're lucky enough that you know, we've just come out of a period of facilities development plan that we've kind of coming towards the end of now. You know, we've developed a main championship pitch within Tymon Park, which is the South Dublin County Council facility. So, you know, we partnered with them to develop a sand-based irrigated pitch that is a lot flatter than it used to be. It used to maybe be a bit of a competitive advantage for us because no clubs like to come to play there. But you know, we flattened that pitch now. It's fully drained. It's got an irrigation system on it, and that's, you know, full kind of Croke Park size dimensions. So it's absolutely fabulous to have that as an asset. And we also resurfaced our all-weather pitch just recently, September 2020, that reopened. And in the period over COVID, which was quite challenging at times due to the restrictions on construction work, but we managed to complete the development of a new gym, and also a skills pitch and new ball alley, for which has become, you know, it's used morning, noon, and night at the moment, and it has lights on it. But you know, even despite kind of developing all those new facilities, the biggest challenge for us is actually training facilities. And I heard other people on the podcast previously saying the same thing, but within Dublin, within that urban environment, and particularly where we're located, just inside the M50, there's not huge tracts of green space that are available for sale or available to kind of partner with someone to develop. So it's very, very difficult, and particularly at this time of year, it's great being at the latter stages of all the championships, but when you're at this time of year, you need to be training under lights, and the access to facilities just is very, very difficult. It's a huge challenge. Like that senior football group have been traveling to, they've traveled to Carlow, Wicklow, up to Louth, just to get training under lights. So it's a huge challenge for the future going forward. But it's something, look, we're putting a group together to try and address it, and try and kind of, because our numbers aren't getting any smaller, and we're just going to need more and more facilities. Like a really good example, and links back to that kind of juvenile development piece, is that like our under 16 team that's leaving now in 2021 to go into under 17 for 2022. There's 25 boys leaving juvenile and 20 girls leaving juvenile, and coming in the bottom end at under 8, we got a group with 90 boys and a group with 70 girls. So you're losing 45 up to adult, but you're gaining 160 out of the academy. So it's and that's going to be that's going to be kind of the norm, I suppose, in the years to come. So yeah, it's probably the biggest thing we're facing at the moment.
Okay, and I guess, again, you're right. That's a challenge. It seems to be for a lot of clubs that we've spoken to over the past few weeks have been kind of talking about the same thing. Those kind of challenges in terms of trying to get land for training and for playing as well. And hopefully you can maintain and keep growing that success, because again, you've spoken there about the great work being done at club level in terms of building the gym and all that kind of thing as well. So it's fantastic to see the club continue to grow, but you can only grow so far if you have limited amount of land. For a lot of people around the area, I'm sure plenty of people around the Temple Oak area who would like to get involved with St. Jude's, but maybe don't know how to do that or what they would be needed for as well. Have you had any advice for people around the area who would like to get involved and volunteer with St. Jude's? Yeah,
I mean, the thing is that, look, there's absolutely lots of initiatives for people to get involved with. We're a very active club, both on the playing side, but also in the community. We're quite progressive, and there's plenty of roles for different people to do, regardless of what your kind of skill set or your background is. So the easiest way to do it is you can go onto our website, which is www.stjudesga.ie. There's a contact section there where you can get contact details for various different people on the different committees and structures, or else just kind of drop up over the weekend. The place is always open, the clubhouse is always open. There's lots of activity and there's lots of people around Saturday and Sunday mornings, and throughout the week. So we're always there, and we're always open to having a chat with someone. And as I said, it's not just games-based activity. Like, we've got an active men's shed club there who assists with the maintenance of facilities, run computer classes, Spanish lessons, chorus sessions. We recently started the Judes Giant team, which offers participation in Gaelic games for kids with additional learning needs. And there's great work ongoing there. We've other different drama groups, cards, bingo. There's lots to do for lots of different people. And we also we look to run kind of help support running charitable events and raising funds for different good causes. So there's plenty of stuff to do there, even if your background isn't in Gaelic games. And if it is, we're always happy to get new people on board and get new faces around the place. So definitely look us up.
Yeah, stjudesga.ie is the website to have a look at. And like I say, plenty of activities, both on the pitch from a GA point of view and off the pitch. As you mentioned, there are all those great activities taking place. So it's a real community hub around there. So stjudesga.ie is the website. Have a look at that for any information. Gareth, thank you very much for joining us this week ahead of what's sure to be an exciting weekend this weekend in the Go Ahead Dublin Senior 1 football final against Kilmacud Crokes. Wish you the very best of luck both this weekend and also going forward with everything you're doing at the club as well.
Yeah. So no, definitely thanks for having us on, Derek, and just want to wish Gareth Roach and Jerry Carty and all the seniors all the best this weekend, and just say huge thanks to the team sponsors DNG and Keith Lowe, who's the chief executive there, so for all their support and generosity. So it's been a huge help to us in achieving our goals, but hopefully we do achieve our goals this weekend. So
thanks, Gareth. Okay, welcome back. Now let's take a look at Sunday's final. Barry, we'll start with yourself. In terms of the matchups, we've spoken already about some of the key players on both teams. Where do you see the battles on the pitch this weekend that will win or lose the game for either team? Who do you see as being the kind of the key players and the key matchups this weekend?
Yeah, well, I suppose with any big game, midfield is going to be crucial. Not just with the two midfielders, but more around that middle eight. Particularly in modern day football now, whereby, goalkeepers don't necessarily go and try and kick it 60, 70 yards too often. They're looking for different kick-out strategies, whether it's out to the wings or maybe just a chip 25-yard kick out to a corner back and try and build the attack from there. But I mean, a couple of guys in particular to look out for who will probably be matched up against each other would be Craig Diaz for Kilmacud Crokes and Collie Murphy from St. Judes, two guys that would have been on our 2011 All-Ireland winning panel under Pat Gilroy. I mean, two really good guys, very high standard, very well committed to their clubs over the last number of years, and have been putting in some great performances year in, year out over the last number of years. And mentioned about Kevin McMenamin, still competing and fighting for that Dublin Senior Championship medal, but likewise with Collie Murphy, who's been there all through it and has a number of campaigns under his belt. So, Collie Murphy is a very reliable player for Judes in that he is that go-to guy if they do need to win a kick-out. Paul Copeland in goals would have a very good relationship with him in terms of rehearsing those kick-outs. They've done it hundreds of times at this stage down through the years. And then with Craig Diaz, very impressed with him the last couple of days. He seems to get on a lot of good ball and use it really well. And obviously he has that athleticism as well to get forward. And he's very composed when he does get into the opposition half. He knows when to take on a score himself, and then he also knows when to draw a man and try and slip it to one of the more prolific scorers as well. So I think those two guys coming up against each other will be interesting because they know each other very well as well, going back to the UCD days. So certainly looking forward to that matchup.
Yeah, and Conor, where do you see the game, I guess, being won and lost insofar as the one key battle maybe that one team needs to win over the other if they're going to win this game?
I think there's probably a couple of things. There's a couple of areas that I think that the two teams will look to try and exploit or certainly make hay. The question about Mannion, I think his performances over the last couple of years for Crokes, it's nearly like, we're into Dermot Connolly territory with St. Vincent's a few years ago, when he was nearly the dominant character in the game. He was going to decide who won and lost the game. But the reason I think it's interesting is, I know Barry was talking about the last time they met in the county final when I think it was Kieran Fitzpatrick marked Mannion. But I think Mannion stayed an awful lot inside that day, and I don't think that's likely to happen on Sunday. I think he'll probably play sort of at 11 for a lot of the game and come out and try and win a lot of the ball. And when he gets in that situation, if he's one-on-one with his man, he'll take him on. If he's not, he can lay it off and try and create an overlap. And then sometimes if he gets the ball in along the end line, he'll just burn his man. And if he gets onto his left foot, he's basically unstoppable. So that will be an interesting one because, I don't think if he lines out at 11, I don't think it's going to be Mark Sweeney that tries to follow him around Parnell Park. I think it'll probably be one of the inside backs, maybe Oisin Manning or Alex Hassett. And I'm sure in that situation, Mannion will try and drag them all over Parnell Park. I think for Judes, one of the big areas where they can, and they have done in the past, had big gains is their two wing backs, Tom Lahiff and Chris Guckian. Both of them are very, very athletic. Guckian's got a very good left foot. Lahiff is very good at breaking tackles. And you can see a lot when they move the ball in moves that not break down, but they have to maybe stop and go again after a ball carrier gets prevented from making any progress, they can come very quickly off the wing. So, it'll be up to Crokes whether they kind of follow those players around the pitch, or where they, Crokes tend to leave at least 4 forwards up at all times. I think it's the reason why they have such a good spread of scorers, whether it's Cunningham or Horan or Darragh Mullen or Hugh Kenny, as well as Mannion. But their wing forwards, whether it's Tom Fox or Shane Cunningham or Shane Horan or whoever it is, they're going to have to make sure that they follow Guckian or Tom Lahiff, because even if they don't score themselves, they can break a line and they can create an overlap. And Judes are really, really ruthless when they get into that sort of situation. So, I think they're probably two of the big areas where the teams will be looking to make big gains on Sunday.
Yeah, Barry, Conor mentioned there, I guess, the spread of scores. I think Kilmacud Crokes had 8 scores the last day. You've spoken already about the fact that, Paul Mannion, and as Conor mentioned, Paul Mannion is going to be maybe the key player in the game this weekend. But they don't, against Na Fianna and the last day against Ballyboden, he wasn't maybe as prolific on the scoreboard as, even though he was man of the match the last day, he wasn't maybe as prolific on the scoreboard. He's had 4 points the last day. Shane Cunningham struggled 1-2. The likes of Tom Fox, Conor Ferris, Darragh Mullen, Hugh Kenny as well. Other options for them right across the forward line. So there's a good spread of scores, I guess, for both teams. But looking at Kilmacud Crokes, first of all, it's not just about maybe marking, keeping Mannion quiet, because there are other options there for Crokes to put some scores on the board as well.
Yeah, certainly. With Paul Mannion at the moment, he's still the most influential player on the pitch, even though he may not be racking up the high scores that he had 2-3 years ago when he played closer to the opposition goal. Shane Horan is one player that has impressed me certainly this year. The Offaly guy, he seems very well balanced around that half forward line. He's well able to get back and get the tackles in and make interceptions, but he has an eye for a score as well. He got 2 points the last day. I think he got 2 as well in the first half of the quarterfinal against Na Fianna. So he's a guy that certainly Judes will be will need to keep an eye on. And, any of the wing backs bombing forward and trying to create overlaps, they certainly will need to keep an eye on him, because he does have that eye for a score. But one guy in particular that has impressed me is Darragh Mullen. I think he is a guy that they need to get as much quick ball into as possible. I think over the last couple of days he has had the beating of his man. He got a brilliant goal against Na Fianna towards the end of the first half. The way he turned and finished that was top class. And I think if Crokes can get on as much early ball into him as possible, it'll certainly help them in terms of trying to get that victory. And Shane Cunningham as well, he got a really good goal the last day. He actually looks a bit like Paul Mannion in terms of how he moves and getting on the ball. He's now become a very much a key player for them over the last couple of years. And again, he not only can link the play, he can actually has an eye for a score as well. So there's a few matchups there for Judes where by the management team will really have to do their homework. And look, they know the Crokes team probably inside out at this stage, haven't played them for the last number of years, but that can go a long way to seeing who actually comes out on top.
Yeah, and then Conor, from a Jude's point of view, we've spoken already about maybe their move away from the reliance on Kev McManaman. And the last day, I think they had 10 scores the last day. Niall Coakley with 1-2, David Mannix 4 points, Paspalan scoring 3 as well from midfield. But they also had 3 scores off the bench quite late in the game, when the game was somewhat still in the mix, following, I think it was a third of Lucan's penalties. They got 3 points from Seamus Ryan, Brian Coakley and Diarmuid McLaughlin off the bench quite late in the game. How important? Well, first of all, again, they have a good spread of scores, St. Jude's as well, so that'll kind of say a lot about in terms of you don't just mark out, for example, Niall Coakley or Kev Mack and win the game. But second of all, how important will the benches be this weekend for both teams?
Yeah, like I would expect it's going to be very tight coming down, the stretch. I can't imagine either team doing what they did in their semi-finals. I just think they're too well kind of matched up for that to happen. So inevitably the bench will come into it in some degree. The level of fitness that are in these club sides now, I'm not sure whether, you have, they're both fairly young teams, I'm not sure you'll have too many fellas wilting out there. So, if they do kind of resort to their bench, I think it'll be to change it up a bit. But it is a big thing with Judes this year. Like I mentioned it earlier, they do have quality on the bench. you looked at the Judes bench versus the Lucan bench the last day, and if Judes were ahead going into the final stretch, they were always going to finish with a better team than Lucan were. So that is a big thing, particularly to have forwards in that sort of situation, and the style of those forwards that you mentioned, when they come on. When an opposition is chasing the game and there's more space in behind, they're really good at exploiting them. So for me, like the really impressive thing about Judes is how they're set up. They always look like they're very well rehearsed when they carry the ball as to what their options are going to be. They tend not to. There's not too much kind of ponderous fella standing around the midfield wondering where the runner is going to be or, which player is going to come towards them. They're really well drilled that way. And I think, when your bench is in tune with that, when they come on and there's a bit more space, they can really go to town. But I don't really see it as a game where a bench is going to win it for either team. You've Callum Pearson on the bench for Kilmacud Crokes. And, the last time they won the championship, he was one of their better forwards. So, I think they're probably both pretty well matched there. But I don't see maybe the two sets of subs having as big an influence in this final.
Okay, let's hear briefly from both camps now ahead of Sunday's game. First up, it's the Kilmacud Crokes camp. Okay, I'm joined by Kilmacud Crokes captain Shane Cunningham ahead of the go-ahead Dublin Senior 1 football final this weekend against St. Jude's. Shane, it's a very exciting time for the club. Obviously, the senior hurlers at the weekend winning the go-ahead Dublin Senior A hurling title. So plenty of excitement around the club. I'm sure you're hoping to continue that excitement and success this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great win for the hurlers. I was here on Saturday night, stunning comeback. And we also, the minor footballers, won on Sunday morning as well. So it's been a great week for the club, and hopefully we can continue it on the weekend.
This year, how do you assess your campaign overall? Even the last couple of games, for example, the game against Na Fianna in the quarter-final, you had to eke out that result right at the very end to get through to the semi-final. And the semi-final, such an impressive performance against Ballybowden, two very different games. How do you assess your season overall heading into this final?
Yeah, absolutely. And even in the group stages of the championship, we had tough group stages. Castleknock, Vincent's and Ballantyre. So when we came into the quarter-final against Na Fianna, we knew it was going to be a tough game. We had lost them in the league final, and it was a very, very close game. I'm sure anyone who remembers watching it, we cleared the ball off the line the last minute, so we were very lucky. And then against Bowden, we performed well in the day. Probably everything went our way on the day, so it was a strong performance. So for us, it was about parking that and preparing for Judes. So hopefully we can do that.
What do you expect from St. Jude's on Sunday?
I look, Judes, they're a great unit. They don't rely heavily on any one or two players, So it's going to be a tight game, I think. I can see it going down to the last 5 minutes and a one-score game personally.
And finally, we've seen the bunting and the flags up around Kilmacud Crokes over the past couple of weeks, obviously with the hurling final last weekend, and they've stayed up for this game this weekend as well. Great support here last Saturday night for the hurlers against Na Fianna in the hurling final. I'm sure you're looking forward to getting the same sort of support this Sunday afternoon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, seeing all the colours around Slorgan drive through, it's a great boost for all of us. That they put a massive effort into doing that in the schools and St. Lawrence's and stuff like that. So it's absolutely brilliant to see it all throughout Slorgan. And hopefully we can get as much support on Sunday as possible. From our friends, family, and the kids and everything. We're looking forward to it.
Okay, joined by Tom Lahiff, the St. Jude's captain ahead of the go-ahead Dublin Senior 1 football final against Kilmacud Crokes. Tom, an exciting week for the club leading up to this county final on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. St. Jude's has a big community spirit, and we're on a good run of form after the ladies football and the ladies camogie team doing really well and winning their final. So we're hoping we can go something similar to that and get the victory on Sunday.
You've obviously experience of major finals with Dublin. You played in the 2020 All-Ireland final, you played in Leinster finals, All-Ireland semi-finals. How does this compare in terms of the build-up to a major final that this is obviously this weekend as well?
Yeah, of course, with any sort of big final or big day out, there's going to be a lot of noise there in the background. So we're just trying to stick as a unit together, train hard together, and then try park that now during the week and enjoy it as well at the same time. It's not every year we get to a county final, so it's just important that we enjoy the occasion as well.
Been a lot of talk, I guess, this year about the change of style that St. Jude's have had this year, maybe in terms of a bit more creative in attack, scoring more maybe than you have done in previous years. How do you assess your season overall and your campaign overall heading into this county final?
Yeah, look, we had a shaky start maybe in the group stages. We opened up with a draw to Lucan and then just about got over the line against Plunkett. But from there we've got ourselves together and we've been playing well and we're building week on week. The big thing, yeah, as you mentioned, we've been scoring a lot more than we have, and that's probably the full forward line there. And Alan Connolly, Dave and Niall have really took on the mantle this year and provided scores in key moments, like, you know. So we're hoping that they'll step up again now come Sunday.
What can you expect from Kilmacud Crokes on Sunday?
You know what you get from Crokes. They're a top team. They've a lot of good lads that will need minding, and even you've seen with our hurlers, they'll probably have a never say die attitude come Sunday. So it's about just making sure that we can play our own game and hopefully come out the right side of it.
Okay, welcome back. Barry, we've spoken about that Judes style of play. We've spoken about it already in this podcast, and we've spoken about it earlier on in the season as well here on the Go Ahead Dublin Club Championship podcast. How has their style changed? What have they done to change how they play? Because they've been so well known as this maybe dogged defensive team that's very hard to beat, but maybe a small bit struggles up top. That's changed around this year. What have they done and how have they managed to kind of change that style of play where they are now racking up big scores? I mean, 114 against Lucan in the opening game, 317 against Plunkett, 223 I think it is against Lusk, 314 versus Thomas Davis and 118 versus Lucan. Big scores on the scoreboard over the past number of weeks. So how have they managed to do that?
A couple of ways, really. I think they have committed to having more forwards up there in the opposition half on a regular basis. There was times there in previous years gone past where they could have all 15 players back inside their own half. And I played against Judes in the championship twice around 2015 and 16, and it was a very, very difficult team to score against and break down because they had so many bodies back in that situation. So I think they have now committed to having at least 3 forwards up there at all times, which obviously can be 4 or 5, and they're able to interswap them as well at various stages depending on who that might be. So I think number one is committing to have those bodies up front. Secondly, I think just their transition of play is a lot quicker. They seem to be very good at looking to kick past the ball out of their defence with a view to having guys on their shoulders, making those hard runs and bursts as a sort of overlap to get into the opposition half. Previously, again, there maybe would have been a little bit too ponderous, in my view, around sideways hand passing, taking that extra hop or solo that's maybe not required. And I think now they feel comfortable in the sort of skill set amongst the team that lads are able to play that 30-yard kick pass, get a guy in the shoulder and really break at pace. So I think those are the main two reasons for them racking up the higher scores. And I think there was probably their realization on their part a couple of years ago to say that, look, our defensive system, we're very comfortable with it, we're very compact, we can certainly limit opposition and it can get us to a certain stage of maybe a quarter-final, semi-final, but realistically, are we going to be able to score enough against the best teams in the Dublin Championship to win a county title? And they had come up short on a couple of occasions in that, and like they've beaten all the best teams over the last number of years, but they haven't been able to do it at that consistent level on the big day. So I think they out of necessity really they had to change it a little bit and maybe move slightly away from that overly defensive system whereby they're able to rack up, maybe a 113, 114 in a final, which could be enough to win, as opposed to maybe racking up that 10, 11 points that, was never going to win a final against the likes of Crokes. So I'm sure they're going to try and apply that on at the weekend again.
Yeah, Conor, you've mentioned already maybe about the fact that more attacking outlook, I guess, would lead them open to the back. But at the same time, they have been very resolute defensively as well. And we saw that the last day they gave nothing away against Lucan. How have they kind of maintained that? It's the balance that every kind of team wants, that kind of creativity up top, the attacking threat up top, but still staying strong at the back. How have they maintained that defensive resoluteness, if that's even a word, to be able to push forward and still create more without giving up too much at the back?
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be tested this weekend, because the one thing the Crokes tend to do is move the ball very quickly. They have targets inside. They tend to kick the ball. They tend to give their forwards a chance. In the past, you could nearly, by modern elite Gaelic football standards, you could nearly accuse them of being reckless, because, there's such a high percentage chance of giving away possession. So what that does is it gives the opposition less time to actually get their defence set up, because you're moving the ball quickly from midfield into the forwards. Because you look at Jude's middle eight, particularly with Tom Lahiff and Mark Sweeney there, they're very good kick-out options to press the opposition's kick-out. But if they're kind of coming up into midfield looking for a break or to try and win a kick-out, and then Crokes win the ball and all of a sudden they're trying to move it quickly into their forward line, you have to make sure that you have cover there. So how have they done it? They have very good defenders, and they have a very, very good system. And in terms of numbers, like, there will be times, like, I would be certain that if Crokes get a run of 3 or 4 points in a row on Sunday, like most teams, Judes aren't alone in doing this, but the Judes would be able to stop the bleeding by kind of resorting to a very kind of structured low block with a lot of players slowing down. Kilmacud Crokes certainly trying to slow down their rate of scoring. But that's not going to win them the game. What's going to win them the game is, their ability to match Crokes scoring over the 60 minutes. And to do that, they are going to have to, I think, leave slight gaps at the back. So, look, it's the first time I think they'll come under that sort of pressure. Crokes will leave men up front. They will try and hit them very early with ball. So I think it's the ultimate test of whether Judes have struck the right balance. Because, like, to their credit, they did get the defensive side of things right. You look at what they had conceded going into, maybe not last year, the year before, and it was something like 9 points a game. It was incredibly, incredibly low. So they had mastered that side of it, as close as you can master the art of defending. The obvious area to go after was the one that they have addressed. So I suppose it goes back to my first point about Judes, that I think the impressive thing about them is every year that they have been beaten, there has been no major collapse in what they're trying to do. There was no tearing up of a script. There was no massive breakup of the team. They've just picked up the following year where they left off and tried to improve it. And I think they've done that steadily now, to the point where, we're talking about them as viable champions on Sunday.
I guess, Barry, one word to describe Judes rather over the last number of years has been dogged, and maybe that was something. I was speaking to Robbie Brennan after the Na Fianna win again in the quarter final, and he was delighted by just how they were dogged in that game. They could easily have lost that game on a couple of occasions right at the very end, and Aaron Byrne had a goal chance, and there's a couple of other opportunities as well for Na Fianna to maybe snatch that win. He was delighted by the spirit they showed in that last quarter, in particular, when Na Fianna were really pushing on and trying to obviously win the game. That's going to be something that'll stand to them, I guess, going into this final, because Judes, despite their change of style or whatever, they're still a very dogged team, and Kilmacud Crokes have shown that they can play that same way as well, and maybe eke out a result. They can play great football, but if they need to eke out a result, they can do that as well.
Yeah, that was a very satisfying victory for Kilmacud Crokes, that quarter-final win over Na Fianna, and I think it really stood to them going into the semi-final against Ballyboden. Ballyboden had a much more comfortable afternoon that day when they beat Castleknock quite convincingly. The game was pretty much over after 15-20 minutes, so it probably wasn't the test that Anthony Rainbow and the management team would have liked going into the Crokes game. But certainly Crokes, yeah, they can win it either way for you, really. They can play top quality flashy football and rack up a high score, or they showed it in that Na Fianna game where they weren't at their best. They looked at times to be in second gear or third gear with more to come, but they didn't actually get to that fourth or fifth gear in that game. And the likes of Rory O'Carroll was really the sort of sound defensive guy there who held it all together, because when Sean Caffrey came on at the start of the second half, he actually nearly ran riot. He scored 4 from play for Na Fianna, and this was on the back of Owen Merchant and Conor McKeon coming off as well. So Na Fianna did throw the kitchen sink essentially at Kilmacud Crokes for that last 20 minutes, but Crokes survived. They kept them at arm's length and managed to eke out that 2-point victory. So I think for Robbie Brennan, as you mentioned, and the management team, it was a really satisfying victory, and it was something that they would have been probably using then in training going into the Ballyboden game. the game this weekend, it's hard to know. I mean, for me with Judes, if you fall behind to Judes, they're a hard team to crack because, as we mentioned before, how good they are defensively. But on the flip side, if you can get a lead against Judes and try and build up that 3, 4, 5 point gap, it would force Judes to come out of their sort of defensive system a little bit, and that's potentially where Crokes could look to exploit different areas and different gaps. So I think going into this weekend, the first quarter is actually going to have a real bearing on this game. If going into the water break, Judes have managed to get a 3 or 4 point lead, they're in a very, very strong position on how they can sort of play the game on their terms for the rest of the match. And Crokes would have to do a little bit of chasing then going on from that. Whereas on the flip side of it is Crokes get a good start. They've shown that they can win these big games in different ways. So, it's all set up for a fascinating game, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, and Barry, you were involved in 2003 with St. Bridget's as well. Bridget's had never won it up to that stage. Obviously, Judes haven't won it either. They have a huge experience in their camp, obviously, in terms of winning titles. Kev Mack is in there, and obviously Tom Lahiff has been with the senior footballers with winning the All-Ireland in 2020. But is that something that plays on your mind? 2003, you were involved with Bridget's. Was that anything? Did it matter at all? The fact that was kind of there. I know obviously Judes have lost a couple of finals in recent years. So that might be more of a thing, but is that idea that winning it for the first time, does that matter at all in the lead up to the game?
Yeah, it does. For us back then, we hadn't won a Dublin Senior Championship, and we'd lost the 95 or 99 final to Na Fianna and the 2001 final to Na Fianna under Kevin Kilmurray. Now that was obviously a phenomenal Na Fianna team with Desi and Sennan and Jao and McKeon and the lads. So, it sort of those couple of finals that we played in did stand to us going into the 2003 final. But for us that year, we just got a lot of momentum as soon as we sort of got a couple of games under our belt and a couple of wins under our belt in the championship, and built that over September, October time, we beat Na Fianna in the semi-final and then Crokes in the final. So we were fortunate that we probably kept our best performance of the year to the final, which obviously helps on that particular day. But I think for players, it's all well and good talking about winning championships and saying you're going to win one and believing you can, but until you actually do it, you do have that question mark over it. But sort of on the other side of it, you're so desperate to get there. Kilmacud Crokes obviously won it 3 years ago. Will the hunger and appetite still be there? You'd imagine it is, but certainly Jude should have a slight bit of an edge in that sense that a number of these players have been chasing that medal for a number of years. So if it does go to the death and into injury time and it's very tight or even into extra time, will Jude have that extra level of desperation nearly to get over the line, which can happen when you're going for your first county title. So I think that is something that will play on their minds a little bit this week, but not to use it as a negative, maybe use it more as a positive and try and spur the team on a little bit.
Okay, good stuff. We're going to get predictions from you both now in a few minutes' time. But first of all, before we do, let's hear again from the Kilmacud Crokes chairman, Kevin Foley, who you spoke to on last week's show in the preview for the hurling final. Here's some of the highlights of what he had to say last week.
Our philosophy, Derek, basically is when kids show up on our door in September, and 170, 200 of them do that every September at 5 years of age, 6 years of age. We don't have a policy or a philosophy of saying no to anybody. And we don't go out recruiting people, but we do try to provide an opportunity for those kids to grow through and achieve their sporting potential in Gaelic games. And we put a lot of effort into helping their mammies and daddies be coaches. We, Pádraig MacDonald, our head coach, and Niall Corcoran, our GPO, both of those guys work a kind of a coach to coaches type program. It's the only way we can work. And mammies and daddies, some of them who never had anything to do with Gaelic games before, when their kids come to us at 5 and 6 years of age, though they work through their kids' sporting lives as coaches and mentors and general supporters of their children as they progress. And that's the real key feature of our club. And so that's us. We're in Stillorgan. Huge volunteer effort. Believe it or not, Derek, we have over 1,000 Garda registered volunteers, and that is some. Gareth vetted volunteers. That is some incredible data, and it's just a product of the quality of what's happening. I think. I mean, I think mammies and daddies like what they see in the club, and like the participation that they get, and like the way that their children are facilitated to be the best they can be. Very, very few of our members will play county finals at senior 1 grade in camogie, ladies football, hurling and football. So our club isn't really it isn't about winning championships. We love to win championships. We love our good players to advance. But it's really about every child and every young person and every adult who's in the club gets an opportunity to play the games and gets an opportunity to be the best that they can be. And indeed, if our players head off into other sports, we celebrate that as well. The idea of young people growing in sport is something that's really central to us. So when Deirdre Duke puts on that green jersey for the Irish hockey team, we delight in that. Deirdre, a long-time ladies footballer with us, has achieved such fulfilment there. Ian Madigan, when he pulls on that Ulster shirt, we're delighted to see Ian there and proud of him. To be fair, all of those guys on our football and hurling teams, they've grown up in our local schools. Our teachers have been out there in the evenings after school, all as they were growing up. Mentors, volunteer coaches when they were young underage players, and they've developed this commitment within themselves to get the best out of themselves in their sport. And thankfully, the quality of what's happening between Robbie Brennan as our manager in football, Baggio as he's known around the club from his playing days, and Kieran Dowling, they put together and facilitated these two teams to be the best they can be. And we're just delighted that they've got our club name out there onto the pitch in county final day, one Sunday after the other, and our camogie and our ladies footballers coming along into a league final afterwards. So look, it's a good time. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, you got to make the best of it. And there's so many people that put so much work into hurling, into football, into ladies football and camogie in our club for decades, since those early days in the 1960s. In fact, Derek, just our very first club secretary was a guy called Larry Ryan, and Larry is our club patron right now. And Larry has been with this club and practically at every match that was ever played in it since the early 1960s. And Larry, I know, is looking forward to this weekend and the weekend after with great excitement. He's one of the greats of our club. But when we reflect back on the decades and decades of service and commitment of Larry Ryan, we just, that's a feature of our club that we're really, really proud of. So really, it's about just making the best of what we have, being the best that we can be in our community, meeting the sporting needs of our members of all abilities and all needs and supports, and just being the best that we can be for people to be the best that they can be, and then to support ourselves in our own wellness and in our own ability to reflect on the challenges that are there in modern life. And and I know, Derek, that young people growing up today, well, you're a lot younger than me, but I know that the young people today face a lot more challenges than I ever faced, and having a regard to the way the modern world goes. And I know that Ciara and her team are very, very focused on supporting our community of young people, and indeed adults, including people as ancient as myself, to be well and to be well in themselves. And we have this model of operating called Crokes Talks, which was initiated really by Kevin Mulligan, as I mentioned, but Lucy Mannion also, Paul's sister actually, Lucy, such an engine she was for developing this idea of people talking to each other, and young people talking to each other. If you're not feeling well, and you talk to somebody, look for support, reach out there, and it's a key for us to keep that kind of culture there and to help our young people to understand the value of talking to each other at all times. So that's a key dimension. I mean, we're a club in a modern world. We've got to behave in a modern way, be the best that we can be on the field, win those championships if we can win them. Yes. But if we can't, just be the best that we can be on the field. And if it's good enough to win a championship, well, then it'll be good enough to win a championship.
Okay, Kevin Foley there. You can watch that interview back in full on last week's hurling final preview on the Dublin GA YouTube channel. Okay, guys, it's predictions time. We're going to put you under pressure here. Who do you see winning this game? How do you see this game going? And I guess where will it be won and lost? Conor, we'll start with yourself. Who do you see coming out victorious on Sunday afternoon?
I'm going to go with Judes. I think I've been really impressed with Crokes this year, particularly as Barry said, the quarter-final win over Na Fianna when they weren't at their best. And one player that we haven't maybe mentioned so far, who's having his best season, I think, for Crokes in a long time, was Rory O'Carroll. He played midfield in a couple of games. He's back at centre back now, which isn't the position I think too many people saw him in, but he's really driving the team on, and he's kind of a rock back there. But I just think with Judes, there is a sense of, I mean, it's a very intangible, but there's this kind of sense of destiny about them. Like they have if you go through the team, players like Mark Sweeney and Kevin McManaman and Chris Guckian and Collie Murphy, who've been there for a long time. They've soldiered over such a long period of time, have been into so many semi-finals. That whole kind of theory of the losing IQ, that every time you lose a big match, you learn a way not to lose it for the next day. I think it's just going to have to add up. And if you were going off the basis of the performances to date exclusively, I think it'd be a very hard one to call. But I just think that Judes have gone through so much, and they've learned so much over the last few years. And as I keep saying, they actually look like a team that every year that they lose, instead of taking it as a setback, they take it as a situation that they can kind of glean lessons from and then quickly learn them. I just think that they've been taking very, very small steps towards this county championship, and I just feel that this is the year for them.
Okay, so Conor going with Judes. Barry, who do you see coming out victorious on Sunday?
I think it's going to be very tight this weekend. Two teams that obviously know each other very well, two sets of players that would have come up against each other numerous times in Division 1 league games and obviously in the championship final itself 3 years ago. I think it'll be interesting to see who Kilmacud Crokes put on Kevin McManaman, because he is playing that reduced role out around the middle where he's a bit more of a playmaker as opposed to being the guy inside. So is that Rory O'Carroll, who would know him very well from the Dublin days, or would it be maybe the likes of Cillian O'Shea, who's having a good championship as well? I just think with Jude, to Conor's point, they have learned a lot of lessons in terms of losing big matches, but they've lost them in quite tight fashion. But year on year, they've slowly just got better and better and progressed and made that maybe 5% improvement over the last 2, 3, 4 years. They've got a bit more comfortable in terms of playing and the offensive side of their play around racking up a score that would be high enough to win these big games. And I just feel that they have a nice bit of momentum with them. There's a nice blend within that group as well at the moment in terms of guys that may have come into the club in the last number of years, and it really seems to be a good collective spirit there. So I think a lot of people will probably have Kilmacud Crokes as favourites, and rightly so. But I'm actually going to go for Judes to sneak this one by a point or two. I think it's their time to finally deliver. And still looking at their team sheet, there was guys that I would have played against in our 2007 semi-final. 14 years ago, and they've put in such a hard shift. They're very deserving of getting that medal. It'll be hard earned, but I think that Judes are going to sneak it at the weekend.
Okay, so both of you going for Judes, which is maybe a bit of a surprise for a lot of people. People would have maybe been looking at Kilmacud Crokes being the favourites, but two for Judes this weekend. Looking forward to a really good game this Sunday afternoon. It's 3:15 at Parnell Park. Live on TG Cahir, it's Kilmacud Crokes versus St. Jude's. Before we go, a quick look at the Senior 2 final as well, lads. And Barry, I know there was big disappointment for yourself and for St. Bridget's in the semi-final, losing out to Templeogue Sing Street the last day. It's Templeogue versus Coola in this Senior 2 final at O'Toole Park on Saturday afternoon. You're obviously at O'Toole Park for the semi-finals. How do you see this game going on Saturday?
Yeah, well, certainly you'd have Coola as favourites. Coola and my own club, St. Bridget's, got to the final last year, and both teams would have got promoted if that had taken place. So I think Coola were always going to be the favourites this year to back that up and get promoted. They were excellent in the semi-final against Sylvester's. Obviously, Conor Callahan had a bit of a field day, scoring 2-7 that day, but they're a very well-balanced team, and I think, fully deserved going up to Senior 1 status, and they should be well able to hold their own next year. I'd certainly have them favourites against Sing Street. The other semi-final that I was at between Bridges and Sing Street, it looked that Bridges maybe got a bit of a foothold at the start of the second half. Cillian O'Gara got a straight red card, and Bridges got the next couple of scores to edge in front. But a couple of guys really stood up for Sing Street that day, and particularly Niall Scully playing midfield. He was absolutely top class. You know, he got on so much ball, carried the ball really well, kicked a couple of really good long range frees midway through that second half when the game was very much in the melting pot. Lorcan O'Dell, another guy who stepped up, managed to get a couple of good scores in the second half from play. And you still have the likes of Owen O'Gara there and Conor McKeon and all these guys. So they're an experienced team, Sing Street. They've done very well, I think, to get through the quarterfinal, semi-final and get promotion, which obviously would have been their main goal. I think they probably won't have enough for Cuala in the final itself. I see Cuala winning this final by maybe 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, and Conor as well, your assessment of this Senior 2 final. Obviously both teams have gone up, so maybe they're big, you know, in terms of their aim at the start of the year would have been to get promotion, and they have got promotion, but obviously a Senior 2 final to come this Saturday afternoon, so a big chance for them to win a trophy. Who do you see winning this one on Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not sure that, you know, when you're trying to preview a final, that you could look at two more contrasting semi-finals. I think the score in the Bridges game and Temple Oak was 10 points to 9, and the score in the Cuala game was 418 to 115 or something like that. And Conor O'Callaghan got 2-7 on his own. So, you know, they're obviously two very, very different games. But look, I think Cuala are a senior team in waiting and have been for the last 2 or 3 years. I thought they were a little bit unlucky the way they went out last year, particularly when Conor O'Callaghan picked up an injury, and you know he's such an amazing focal point for that team. So, you know, the fact that both teams are up, I don't think it'll make much of a difference. There's still a championship to win. There's still a trophy to play for, and unlike Barry, I think that Cuala team is really, really talented all the way through it, and I could see them not just going up and winning at the weekend, but holding their own at senior and progressing on from there over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and Barry, just finally, what can you expect from Cuala? They've gone up now. I mean, a lot of people would have been looking at Cuala for the last few years and kind of expecting them to get promoted over the last 2 or 3 years. They've gone up now. They obviously have the quality throughout the team that we know. I mean, you know, Mick Fitz, Padder Coffey-Byrne, Conor Mullally, and obviously Con up top. A lot of quality in there, like household names. What can we expect from them? Maybe not next year, but over the coming years. Do you see them, you know, really pushing on and going far in the Senior 1 Championship over the next few years?
I do, yeah. I mean, you look what Lucan have done this year in terms of getting to a semi-final. I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility for Cuala over the next 2, 3, 4 years. They have all those talented players that you mentioned. If you look at any Dublin minor or under 20 football squad over the last 3, 4, 5 years, there was always Cuala players there represented. They've done well in the club championships at that level as well. So I think there's a nice conveyor belt of players coming through there. I suppose the hurlers probably are on the slight decline a small bit. So maybe a couple of dual players there could possibly give the football side of it a bit more of a focus. But I think in general, Cuala, who are, you know, pretty much a seasoned, you know, Division 1 team there as well, which is important because when you're Division 1, you're playing at that level, getting 15 games, usually pre-COVID anyway, under your belt, which is a really good sort of test throughout the year and a build up to the championship. So I think for Cuala, you know, their full value of being in Tier 1 as such in the Senior 1 Championship. And I think for them next year, getting out of the group is very much a target for them. And I think that would be real progress for them to build on over the next couple of years.
Okay, good stuff. That's the Senior 2 football final, the Go Ahead Dublin Senior 2 football final this Saturday afternoon at O'Toole Park. It's a 2:30 throw-in for that one, Cuala versus Temple Oak, Sing Street. And the Senior 1 final, it's on Sunday afternoon, 3:15 at Parnell Park. It's St. Jude's versus Kilmacud Crokes, the Senior 1 final live on TG Cahill as well. And you can get tickets for the Senior 1 and Senior 2 and all the games this weekend at O'Toole and Parnell Park on dublinga.ie. So check that out for tickets information. Okay, guys, listen, thanks a million for joining us this week and for looking ahead to what we hope will be another cracking final this Sunday afternoon at Parnell Park, Kilmacud Crokes versus St. Jude's. Both of you going for St. Jude's, so we'll have to have you on again to see if you're right or wrong. Thanks a million for joining us, guys.
Cheers, Derek.
Okay, I'm joined by former Dublin under-20 hurling manager Paul O'Brien now to look back on what was an epic go-ahead Dublin Senior A hurling final on Saturday evening. Kilmacud Crokes coming out on top after extra time. What a game of hurling, Paul. I'm not sure if you've caught your breath yet after it. It was a sensational game of hurling. Crokes coming out on top, beating Na Fianna in the end by 426 to 225. But so much going on in that game, especially in the last 10 minutes of normal time and into extra time as well. What did you make of it?
Yeah, Derek, look, it was I was there on Saturday night, and I was really looking forward to the game. And typically what happens when you're looking forward to a game, be it Man United against Liverpool or Man United against City, it ends up being a dull 0-0 draw, and it doesn't live up to expectations. But this actually surpassed it. And look, it was a fantastic game of hurling. Look, a great spectacle of the quality hurlers that are in Dublin. Look, I'll be honest with you, I really, really enjoyed it, and it was like two really good management teams going at it, both well set up, and changes in the game. And look, it was free flowing. It was a great game of hurling, and I wouldn't typically be too complimentary of refs. I thought Chris Mooney done a really good job as well. He allowed a good physical, free flowing game of hurling to develop. So fair play to Chris on that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Na Fianna are going to feel like they left it behind them because they were 9 points clear with 10 minutes to go, and had led for most of the game and had dominated a lot of the game. Sean Curry, 6 points in that first half, a brilliant performance. He's the go-ahead man of the match, and a brilliant performance, especially in that first half. 115 to 111 up at half time. Probably should have been further ahead even at half time. Certainly that third quarter, that they were the better team up until that 50-minute mark. They will feel like they left it behind them, obviously leaving Parnell Park on Saturday evening.
Yeah, and look, I suppose sitting here last week, I thought Na Fianna were going to win, and I suppose the other two boys know more than me now because they got the predictions right. I thought Na Fianna were going to win because I felt they'd have their homework done on Crokes, which they certainly did. And I suppose a lot of the narrative around Na Fianna is going to be that last 10 minutes and into extra time. They gave it a really, really accomplished performance for their first county final. Like we talked in the preview show about, we'll say, trying to their half forward line, trying to get a number of possessions a little bit deeper out the field, and Sean Curry done that superbly, hitting 6 points from play in the first half, and he kind of got 5 points from play in the first 26-27 minutes of Pádraig Linehan. And Pádraig Linehan, for me, ended up being the real catalyst to, we'll say, the comeback for Crokes as well in that second half. But I suppose for Crokes, putting Davy Crowe out onto him managed to shut Sean Curry and that threat down really, really well. There was, again, like, being complimentary of Na Fianna, they had Fergie Bratnock set up well as that sweeper, and allied that to getting be a Pádraig Linehan and Bill O'Carroll actually delivered an amount of ball. They were delivering that ball from kind of 10-15 yards further back than they had been in previous games. So that was kind of leading to Na Fianna picking up an amount of possession and kind of being dominant in them areas. And that's down to the work the management team done and the Na Fianna team done on the training ground in advance of the game. And like, I suppose I'd personally question what would Crokes do, and certainly in that last 15 minutes they changed up tack and they carried a considerable amount more ball, you know. So it was just great to see the level of adaptability and playing off the cuff that was there from both teams. And like, obviously so many of the forwards scored. Like, I think I'm not 100% on this, but I think every forward who started scored, which is great, because I suppose some of our country cousins wouldn't be saying that there's too many natural forwards in Dublin, you know. So look, that bodes well for lads going into the senior setup as well, you know.
Yeah, big time. So listen, third quarter, I think Ronan Hayes hit 3 points in a row from frees. It felt a bit like Crokes were kind of clinging on here a small bit in the game. Then Donald Burke scores his second goal of the game around the 50-minute mark, and it very much looked like it was game over. They were 9 points clear with 50 minutes on the clock. What happened? What happened to both teams, I guess? How did Crokes turn it all around to level the game by the full-time whistle, and what happened to Na Fianna as well?
Yeah, like I suppose there's two teams at play here, and like credit must really go to Crokes for not giving up in that scenario. Like I suppose very much all year long they'd been a deliver quick ball into the two men inside, and that's how they went about things, and it worked for them all year. But we'll say Oisin's goal and Ronan's goal, both of them scores came from Pádraig Linehan and Davy Crowe carrying ball 40, 50 yards up the field, hand passing or kind of a brick flick to Oisin and Ronan, and they get their quality men on the ball inside the 21, and they score two fantastic goals. So like that change that Crokes made of carrying ball, and it continued throughout the extra time. Like he obviously didn't start the game, but I actually thought Kino Kohazig, who is a really good young hurler, he's under 20 again next year. I thought he made a massive impact in terms of driving forward with ball in that last couple of minutes, in the dying minutes of normal time and into extra time. I thought he had a massive impact on the game, which was really good to see. And like, look, the substitutions had an impact on the game, both from both Na Fianna and Crokes' perspective. I actually thought one thing that kind of happened with Na Fianna is Sean Baxter was having a game, and Sean Baxter's full of energy and he drives forward a hell of a lot on the ball. And one thing kind of in that third quarter, I looked at Oisin O'Rourke at one stage, and he was completely gassed from chasing Sean Baxter back up the field. And that's like, you want to get Oisin O'Rourke as far away from the goal as you possibly can. And I thought when kind of Na Fianna realigned, it allowed Oisin to get that bit closer to the goal, and obviously it led to him getting the goal, and he got a couple of an additional score or two in that final quarter and into extra time as well. So that had an impact as well. Yeah, but like for me, it's very much like well done to Crokes on how they went about it. In the middle of the field, like Lorcan McMullen and Dylan Mulligan, for two fellas who aren't absolutely man mountains by any stretch of the imagination, the physicality and the energy they brought to the middle was absolutely massive. And I thought the two of them like really thrived in them kind of close contact situations, both tackling and winning rucks on the ground and using balls smartly out of them. I thought it was really, really, really good to see. And like, then if you kind of look at it from other perspectives, like Mark Rogan done a super job kind of shutting down Donald Burke. I thought Liam Rush and Fergal Whiteley had a really good battle. Obviously David Crowe, when he went on to Sean Curry, managed to shut him down, and like Colin was shut down in the first half as well. So there was a lot of really good stuff there from both an attacking and defensive perspective from teams.
Yeah, and a word on Ronan Hayes, because he was kind of the man of the moment in that last 5 minutes and then extra time as well. 5 minutes to go, he gets a penalty. He miscues it and puts it wide. I think everybody in the ground kind of felt if he gets his penalty, they have a chance of winning this, or at least leveling the game. He missed it. He went up then and scored that goal in the 65th minute of the game. He had no right to even probably get a shot off, and scored that goal to bring the game to extra time, and then scored, I think, 6 points in extra time then to win the game for Crokes. A massive turnaround. That mentality that he had, I'm pretty sure, we were speaking off air, I'm pretty sure he missed a scoring opportunity, a point opportunity, either before or after the penalty, around the time of the penalty as well. So things weren't going well for him in that last with 5 minutes to go in the game when they really needed him to step up. It didn't look like they were going well for him. He turned that all around completely with that goal, and then an incredible performance in extra time as well. That mentality is something to really admire, I guess, from him.
Yeah, and it was interesting. He's a really engaging character as well, and like the penalty. I seen someone kind of had a look at my phone after the game. Someone was watching the game on RTE at home and said John O'Tracy was doing grobbler-like antics in the goal, and look, he managed to psych Ronan out in that scenario. But Jesus, like Ronan had a really good first quarter, then second quarter, third quarter, not so good, and then to stand up in the manner he stood up in that final quarter and into extra time. Look, that's what you want from your senior intercounty players. You want them to be standing up and taking the game by the scruff of the neck, and that's certainly what Ronan done. And you mentioned, like, in that period where Crokes are trying to come back from that 9-point deficit, they had 2 wides kind of around 50-55 meters out in front of the goal, and Ronan hit one of them as well, but he just kept coming and he kept showing, and like, fair play to him, like, genuinely, because he's a great fella and a great hurler, and he's really working hard to get the most out of himself. Like I know over lockdown, I remember being out in Crokes one day and I was talking to one of his mentors, and they were saying that he was after putting 10 kg or 9 or 10 kg on over that kind of lockdown period. And he went from, we'll say, that nice hurler who was able to do exquisite things from time to time to being a really strong ball winner who does really good things all the time now. And look, it's great. I think he's going to be a real focal point of the Dublin attack now come 2022, sorry.
A word on Na Fianna, because I mean, they're obviously going to be heartbroken after the game, the manner it played out, but it's been a really positive year for them, and they can take huge positives out of it. They're going to be focusing on the final, obviously, but winning the league this year, their performances throughout the championship campaign, if they had held on to win the game in normal time, you would have said they were deserving champions, because they've been, one of the best teams, one of the 2 best teams in the county over the whole season. But certainly they would have deserved to win this championship title. A lot of young players in there as well. Huge amount to be positive about. If they can take the positives from this year into 2022, that they'll be a force to be reckoned with, and potentially, if they can get over that line, they're a team that could easily go on and win a few county titles if they can get over that line, such as their quality and their youth that they have in the panel.
Yeah, and we'll say between both starting 15 teams, over 90% of the lads were under 25 years of age as well, and that really shows, I suppose, what's to come from these 2 teams in the coming years. Like, you have to bear in mind as well, like, Sean Curry didn't see any real action during the group stages, so he was coming in without having a huge amount of hurling done. Colin had an excellent year, and really became that focal point of their attack as well. And look, a fella, I'll be honest, I am a real fan of is Micheál Murphy, and Micheál Murphy had a massive impact from around the middle of the field there on Saturday evening as well. So them fellas going in alongside Donald Burke is a really attractive and strong and strong team, and earlier on in the year as well, and he didn't see any action over the last 2 days, is Tom Gleeson, another fella who's under 20 with Dublin next year. He's seen a good bit of game time and scored heavily in the group stages as well. So he's another fella who's going to drive on there in the future as well. So look, I'm not going to plumose them in saying hard luck or anything like that, but they have a lot there to really drive on in the coming years ahead, and I don't think this is the last time we're going to see a game of that quality between Crokes and Na Fianna.
Yeah, hopefully not, because it was a game for the ages, really. It's one of those games that you'll watch back in a few years' time. And I think a lot of people were just shocked by the turnaround, obviously, and watching it. People watching from home and people watching from here. It was just fantastic entertainment. We need to talk about. You mentioned the youth in both teams. And Na Fianna in particular, and obviously Kilmacud Crokes, a huge amount of youth. Overall, this year, it's been a very positive year for Dublin hurling because we've seen a lot of standout performers and guys who are putting their hands up for selection for Maddie Kenny and Dublin senior hurling going forward. It's been a really positive year in that regard in terms of really some really good performances and really good, talent coming through this through Dublin hurling, and which we've seen in this championship over the past few months.
Yeah, look, there's absolutely no doubt about that, and like people might possibly say I'm biased in some of the people I'm going to mention here now because they're people I've dealt with Dublin teams, but I'd be very much looking at it from a perspective of there was so much young talent on show there at the weekend, and throughout the knockout stages and the group stages, it was young lads really coming to the fore with teams, and like I do think there's a big onus now on Matty Kenny to give the opportunity to some of them young lads who've shown well at club level, because they physically dominated older lads, and their hurling has been really sharp as well. Like looking at the two finalists in particular, like Davy Crowe, Dara Purcell and Keane O'Cossack are still under 20 for 2022, and look, they'll under the guidance of Sean Power. And I know all three of them are out in UCD as well, and like be it with Cian Waldron and Johnny McGlynn with their fresher team, or with Conor O'Shea on their fits team, they'll get good opportunity to get a lot of opportunities of game time in through Leinster into Fitzgibbon fresher and then into an under 20 campaign. And I think this time next year there's a lot of them going to be like on pushing into that senior panel. But we'll say fellas who are out with that underage bracket, like I think as well, Pádraig Linehan and Brian Sheehy, again, they'll get good exposure to more high level hurling. Like they have to play Raharney, and hopefully they progress on and to whoever wins Offaly and progress on to possibly getting the opportunity to mark the likes of Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen and TJ Reid. So there's great opportunity for learning there. And again, like Pádraig and Brian are out in UCD, they'll get an opportunity for a good level of fits hurling. And I think they'll push in to a Dublin senior panel in time. Like obviously there's been a lot of talk about Alex O'Neill throughout the year. He's been excellent. I'd love to see him in there. Just he got straight in, and like he brings a huge work rate and speed and dynamic, and he'd offer loads. We'll say on another one there as well for me is Mark Rogan. I think he's a fantastic hurler, and he's physically strong. He knows how to play hurling. I think he'd add a huge amount to Matty's setup as well. And then we'll say on the Na Fianna side, like a lot of them are in there already. I think, like, look, the two Currys need to see game time. They've been in and around the panel for a few years on and off the panel. They need to be given proper opportunity to show what they're about, because look, if a fella's scoring 7 points for play in a county senior hurling final like Sean did, he needs to get that opportunity to see can he do it at the next level up. Like I know he's in DCU, and he'll hopefully go well with them in the Fitzgibbon in January, February. But I really hope he pushes on then throughout the year with Dublin and really gives it a good go. So like them two teams in particular have a lot of young lads coming through. We'll say other fellas who impressed, we'll say from a senior perspective. I suppose Dowser's a fella who went really well for Lucan, and again he has a number of attributes and skills that I think are suited actually to senior intercounty hurling. He has pace, he's strength, he's a good striker of the ball. Similarly, Cian Derwin from Crave and Owen Dunn from Bridget's, again, both good, strong strikers of the ball, intelligent hurlers. I think they'd offer something different as well. If they get the opportunity for a prolonged spell inside. Then the likes of, something that kind of came about in the championship, and something Limerick have done with, we say, redeploying Kyle Hayes back to wing back, and like I know he scored 2 goals in the championship, kind of with driving runs forward from wing back. I thought Cian Boland had an excellent game against Fogs, playing in that wing back role. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it the following day out. Just we'll say a repositioning of lads with that pace and athleticism out to around the middle of the field to play a more powerful, strong running game might be useful. And then like another fella, and I'm not talking about him for the senior panel, but I thought James O'Brien was excellent in that Fogs against Plunkett's match as well, and he was the real leader for Fogs that day, and hopefully he pushes on with the Dublin under-20s now this year as well. So look, there's lots there, and look, I'm definitely missing a few. And like, look, I know I said it last week, I think, and he was excellent in the final. Eddie Gibbons deserves a shot up there to work with the likes of Alan and Sean as well in the goal, you know.
Yeah, big time. And again, I guess huge credit must go to the management of these teams to be putting young guys in there, because it can be a risk at times to be throwing young lads in. And Neil, Kieran and Donal in particular in the final, we saw a huge array of young talent in the county final. So huge credit must go to those to Neil and to Kieran and
as well. Sorry. Like Micheál Murphy is another fella who I think is tailor made to be in the senior intercounty setup as well. And I thought he was a real driver for Na Fianna this year as well.
Yeah, big time. Before we go, a quick look, because you've spoken about the positives, I guess, coming out of the Senior A Championship. Senior B and intermediate finals were on over the weekend as well, and I guess positive again from a Dublin hurling point of view to see Castleknock come out on top in the Senior B. No disrespect to Kilmacud Crokes. I know yourself and the guys last week were eager to see Castleknock keep progressing, winning the Senior B title at the weekend, and Fingallians winning the intermediate title as well. Overall, these are two clubs that are again progressing with Dublin hurling and doing very well from a hurling point of view, and hopefully we see them go from strength to strength over the next few years. Yeah, and look, if you were to ask most people what's the dominant code in Castleknock and Fingallians, you probably would say football. And like there's a lot of people really fighting strong battles out in them clubs to really drive the hurling on. And I could mention loads of people, and I do it a disservice by trying to mention everyone, but like Anton O'Clerig is like really driven Castleknock on for a long time, and like a lot of them young lads would have went through his hands. And similarly, John Williams and Niall Howard over in Fingallians, a lot of them young lads would have went through their hands as well. And they've really been driving the small ball in them clubs for a long time. And it's great to see that they're getting kind of rewards for it, you know. And again, like a lot of good young lads there. Like I know, look, Dara Power will say in the Fingallians is the standout, but there was a lot of other fellas who really impressed. I know Ben Steers, will say a strong defensive hurler. He got a bad injury in the game and kind of came back, and just shows the kind of mentality of the young fella in that game. And then out in O'Toole Park on the Sunday as well. And I wasn't at the game. I believe there was a number of really strong performances from the likes of Conor Murray and Luke Whelan and Cian Boyle. And it's really good to see. It's really good to see the new teams coming on. I don't actually know specifically what way the tiers fall. I know what way Senior 1 falls. I don't know where Castleknock and Fingallians are going to lie for the 2022 championship, whether they're Senior 2 or they're Senior 3 or where they are. But I think we're going to have a kind of a number of really strong competitive championships heading into next year as well. And it's great to see. It's good that we have all the clubs going so well. Yeah, big time. And as you mentioned there is a restructure in the championship next year. The CCC will be having and releasing the details who and which teams are where in Senior A, B, and Senior C over the next few months, I'm sure. But again, as you mentioned, plenty of competitive action we look forward to in 2022. And again, it has to be said, we've had a fantastic season this year with some really high quality games and really competitive action, no more so than the county final last Saturday, which was a fantastic game of hurling and a thrilling game of hurling to finish the season out. Congratulations, Kilmacud Crokes. They are the Senior A hurling champions for 2022. And Paul, thank you 2021. I'm skipping ahead of myself already. But congratulations to Kilmacud Crokes. And Paul, thank you very much for joining us in this season and this evening as well to look back on the county final. Thanks, Paul.
No problem.
And that is the Go Ahead Dublin Championship show for this week and for this season as well. A reminder that match tickets are available on dublinga.ie for the Go Ahead Dublin Senior 1, Senior 2, Intermediate and Junior 1 football finals, as well as for the Minor A hurling final. And if you can't make it to Parnell Park this Sunday afternoon, don't forget that the Go Ahead Senior 1 football final between Kilmacud Crokes and St. Judes will be shown live on TG Cahill as well, so you can catch it wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in this week and for this season. Enjoy the games this weekend, and goodbye.